right. Good morning, PT on Ice crowd. Today is Monday, the 31st. End of the line, end of the year. I'm Mike Eisenhart, lead faculty for the Population Health Division and Group, and it's Monday. So a little Monday with Pop. We'll get started this morning. Wish everybody an almost happy new year, and dive into some concepts that I think are important this time of year for all of us to sort of think about and jump on. So it's a little past 8:30, so I'll go ahead and jump right into it. A couple of minutes behind this morning. Hey Mark, good morning. So this morning what I thought I would do is talk a little bit about kind of reflecting. It's a great time of year to do that. You know, for me, today is actually a pretty big holiday. It's a big day. I really like this day, kind of New Year's Eve, for a lot of reasons. One, I have a godson and a son who were both born on this day. So happy birthday to both of them. But, ironically enough, many years apart, both born on the same day. So it's always a big deal in our house because, it gives us a chance to celebrate them and sort of their year. But also, it's such an important moment. It's such a key time. I think we sometimes lose a little bit in the moment. So actually, let me start my clock here. We lose a little bit on New Year's Eve because we're always sort of interested in the party and kind of the fun of it, that I feel like we sometimes miss that opportunity that it presents, that one time a year where we're sort of right in that moment between, kind of last year and this year, and like the 11:59:59 on New Year's, that concept of like, you're right there, like this is your moment. You can look back a little bit, if you look backward, you can look back and see all of the cool things and amazing things that have happened in this year. And then you can look forward a little bit and right there, you're sort of right at the dawn of the new year, and you can obviously see sort of what's coming. So I thought I would do that a little bit today. I would look back a little bit on some of the 2018 concepts that I think really made a difference. I don't like to get too caught up into it. I think sometimes we get a little overdone, kind of looking backward too long. So I don't want to spend too much time there. But I do want to do a little bit, because I think there were some key things that happened in 2018 from a clinical perspective, from a perspective that allows us to really kind of lean into 2019 and push the needle forward even further. So I thought I would do that. One of the first for me at least, was an appreciation of history. I think 2018 was a good year for us to kind of think a lot about kind of historical stuff. We often get too caught up into pushing forward, pushing, and not remembering sort of the people that were standing on their shoulders. And I know many of us spoke to that in 2018 on this podcast. We talked a lot about the idea of standing on the shoulders of giants and kind of building, what we've learned on other people's contributions. And I think that 2018 was a lot of that. For me personally, I found myself really gravitating toward JFK and the Teddy, so I talked about that a lot in the late summer, and people sort of heard about that and saw the experience, but that was really just kind of, me looking back, a reflection on kind of thinking about the fact that many generations have been here before. Many generations have sort of done some of the stuff that we're trying to do, and they moved it forward a notch for us so that we can move it forward, hopefully the next notch. And make a difference there. So that was a big one, an appreciation of history, looking back, and really a hat tip to all of those people who have kind of come before, both us professionally and also just historically overall. So that was a big one. The second one that I think was really, really big, and I think we're going to see more of this, but I think this was a huge one, was the acknowledgement of sort of that history from a biological perspective. Kind of like, like your childhood history, your health history, sort of what are the adversities that you may have experienced. So this whole concept of ACEs really kind of made landfall in the PT world, I think, this year. It's been around for a while. I think the original ACEs study was started in like 1995, maybe even reported on in 1995. But that's when the discovery was kind of made. This idea that your early childhood and your experiences, and specifically 7 different types of adverse experiences, can kind of predict your health future. That was really, really important. And I think the work is so important because it forces us to acknowledge that you can actually predict a little bit into the future. That's something that up until this year, I think the PT world had really spent a lot of time saying, no, you can't predict, and so we can't prevent because we can't predict. It's impossible to predict complex systems. And the answer, of course, is yes, that's true. You can't fully predict, But when you have things like ACEs and the contributions of ACEs being made, you know that you can, to a certain extent, predict, at least in sort of big trend level stuff. And so I think 2018 was the year that it really sort of hit in the world. And to the credit of the people who have been involved, that concept has now gone out, and I'm seeing more and more of it in the PT conversation, which is awesome, because it's really giving us this ability to sort of appreciate the fact that lots of different factors play into health. So I think that was a really, really big one looking back. And that kind of bridges into the next one, which I think this was the year that in the PT world, we've sort of broadened our definition of load. And I was really, really happy to see that. It was so cool to see kind of the U.S. Olympic consensus statements, and I've referred to that many times, and I know lots of us often do. But the idea that now it's sort of broadened to a bigger concept, right? This idea of kind of allostatic load, I think, became a more commonplace bit of conversation in the PT world, and I'm really happy to see that. The sort of like immuno-inflammatory axis, whatever you want to call that. That has been a really, really big concept that now I think people are starting to get their minds wrapped around. Like in clinical care, we're not looking in isolation as much anymore. We're starting to look at the whole person. And the reason why we're doing that is because we're understanding, that it's not just a part. Like we've always sort of known that, but I don't know that it's made its way into practice. And I know for me, I'm seeing it in the lexicon everywhere. Like people are kind of talking about, this idea of sort of the whole person and how, the overall load on the system can kind of translate all the way down to the cellular level and all the way up to the societal level. And so that idea, broadening the idea, that kind of allostatic concept, was a really, really big one in my mind. And so those are some really important ones. I think that the next one, and this is maybe more societal, that looking back I think was important, is that transparency has now become, a weapon. And I say that in a, like, I don't know, I don't necessarily like that word, but the people who have been, like the status quo in many ways, who have benefited from not having transparency, not having information accessible to all parties in a transparent way, they are on shaky ground. We're seeing this. We're seeing huge backlash against groups who have typically made lots and lots of money on the fact that they knew something that other people didn't. Whether you look at kind of like what's happened in pharmacy or what's happened in large hospital systems, the big players, insurance companies, the big players are now on shaky ground at some level because transparency is now being sort of weaponized. And I think that is really big. And the reason why I sort of save that one till the end of the historical ones is because I think that is going to set the tone for 2019 in the future. If you really want to look into what's going to happen now, based on the past, like what's going to happen in the future, I think you can do it. And I think the key here is that trust has now become the major currency of choice. I think if you really look around and you see who has really thrived in at the end of 2018 and who has really grown, it's the people who have built trust. It's the people who have really, really spent time and effort and energy building trust and making that the absolutely critical currency in relationships. And I think the reason why that all fits in and why it all kind of comes together is because it goes right back to that whole idea of connect and the concept that social groups are often what's going to be driving people to endure. So let me get into some of these things that I think would really be predictions. I'm kind of at the halfway point. So looking back, those kind of four principles, those four key things, right? An appreciation of history overall, like at the biological and social level, right? So down into like the ACEs idea. And the biological level, so sort of that allostatic immuno-inflammatory axis, whatever you want to call that, and then the fact that transparency and having that information and understanding it now becomes weaponized. So those are four critical things that happened in 2018 that will set us up, I think, into 2019. And the things that I think are really going to be critical here is that 2019 will be the year that Connect really, really becomes like the shining moment. We saw it this year, like tribes without tribalism. That was a 2018 thing, and that was cool. Like people started to really gravitate into more and more groups in our profession, but not all of them became tribalistic. Not all of them sort of defended their turf. It was more open and welcoming. But definitely, you have your people. Like, hey, these are my people, and I sort of relate to them and understand them and hang out with them, and that's totally cool. And it's an open door if you want to come in and join and have a day with us and see what you think. So that idea of tribes without tribalism is important, and I think that's going to set the tone in many ways. Where 2019 is the year that Connect begins to really shine through. Now, what I mean by shine through is, Connect has sort of been like a big wide spray up until this point. I think we're going to see it kind of get laser-like. More and more groups are going to get focused and connected to the point where now you take sort of the pressure washer idea. Right, I jam the same amount of water into a much smaller pipe under pressure, and I can split rock with that. Right, I can go through the hard stuff because I'm so focused and so laser-like. I think that's really where Connect is going to get. Working groups and working tribes are now going to start to define their mission to the point where they can move forward in a very, very efficient way. So this idea of almost groupthink in a good way, not negative groupthink, but more like group flow. Like that idea of kind of connectedness and working kind of hive mind sort of stuff. I think we're going to see that in 2019. I think the groups who figure that out are going to be the groups who not only survive but thrive. And that can be in the PT world, that can be anywhere. The second one, I think we're going to see a shift because of that, because of the group dynamic idea. We're going to see the shift from what can I get to what can I give. Like the 2019 shift could easily go from what can I get from this situation, a very selfish kind of a scenario, like well, what's in it for me? I think that's getting near the end. It's getting to the point where transparency, as I said before, is so important that now that's going to get to sort of the end, and it's going to be what do I bring? What can I give? What do I bring to the group that matters? What can I give to the group? How can I contribute to that hive mind? That one is close. I don't know if it'll be 2019 or 2020, but within the next 2 to 3 years, there's without a doubt there's going to be a shift. Of this concept of, well, what's in it for me, and I don't do anything if it's not in it for me. But on the flip side, like what can I bring? I think that's a really, really big one. The next one I think is we're going to see communication get even more important. We're now at a point where the market is so saturated, you can't go anywhere without being kind of nailed down by somebody on your social media platforms about, like, now everybody has some kind of a channel. And so I really feel like in 2019 is if you can't make it simple, you can't make it. It's gonna be there. It's like if you can't simplify it, if you can't get it to the point where everyone can understand it quickly, if you're still talking about kind of high level, hard concepts, guys like me are going to struggle with that, right? Like if you want to talk about the heady concepts and you can't get it down to something that everyone can understand very quickly, you're in some trouble. And I think what that's going to do, and this is, I don't mean this as a negative, but there's a whole faction of the world of physical therapy who are sort of pedantic. Like they love to just kind of like talk about these, like lofty concepts and sound super smart and use really big words that nobody can understand. And I think those folks are on shaky ground because that's not what the world values. What the world value is I have to trust you, and I can't trust you if I can't understand you. And so communication is going to be at the absolute bedrock of success. And it already is happening, but I think 2019 we're going to see that become the thing. And then in my last 2 minutes, my final kind of 2 minutes here, what I wanted to talk about was I think that we're gonna see that 2019 is the year to endure. I think we're almost at the bottom of this kind of like this switch over toward value. Like that's been happening over the last 5 years. We're getting there. It's very close. I put a thing this weekend on the Pain Reframe group, just kind of threw it out there as a draft document on pain. And you could see a lot of the biopsychosocial stuff in there, and you can see a lot of conservative care in there. And I think that really signals something. It shows that we're getting toward value. We're getting away in many ways from just kind of care to deliver care and really high expensive, non-transparent, crap, to be honest with you. Like we're getting toward value. And when we get toward value and we finally make that transition, it's going to benefit folks who have been kind of slogging out conservative care. That's not a question. but I think it's going to be the year to endure. Right, like we're gonna be talking about how good this is maybe in 2020 or 2021. I don't think we're gonna talk about how good it is in 2019, just at the rate of change. So I think it's gonna be about connect to endure, and there's a lot there. Whether you go back to allostatic load and ACEs, or whether you look at this month's or this week's or whatever it is, Scientific American, right on the front. I know my friend Alan, who I saw sign on. I don't know if he's still on there. He likes to talk about monkeys hoarding their bananas, right? I've heard him mention that a couple of times, and he is spot on. And if you can't, I mean, you want to read something, read 2 articles in this. One, We're Evolved to Exercise, very interesting article. And the second one is all about baboons and the evolutionary biologists sort of using what they know about the social dynamics of baboons to apply to public health concerns. That's value right there. That's connect to endure. I think 2018 or 2019 could really be the year of connect to endure. This concept of if you don't have strong ties, deep relationships, not how many you have, right? I think that's going to go away, right? This concept of like how many people do you know in your social network? How big is your network to how deep is your network, right? Like I think it's going to be who are the people who you have, who you can call, and those 5 or 10 or 15 or 20, but more than likely less than 150, since we know that's the dynamic stuff. I'll stop there. Less than 150. Deep connections. The people that can mobilize and turn into that pressure washer idea. Who can get focused and get laser-like. Be tribal without tribalistic nature, without being a tribalism. But be tribal. Have your tribe, and move forward quickly and hard. So I think that, bottom line on all this stuff is that, it's a nice time of year to look back for a second and appreciate. Don't get caught looking back too long, because there is a lot to look forward. There's still plenty of wind. We're going to be walking into the wind. There's no question, fighting into the wind. But I will tell you this. I think if you have your folks, if you have your people, and you are focused and you can make the message simple, and I think that if you appreciate the fact that history and the past in many ways does biologically dictate the future, if you can appreciate that, then I think you can push your message forward, and really we can make change. And that's what this is all about. So without taking up any more time, I'll leave it there. I'd be interested to hear other people's predictions. I would be interested to hear what other people's year in review is. What do you think were the most important contributions? What are the things that you think are shaping the future of what we do? There's a ton. There's no question there's a ton. But I think those are the ones that stuck out for me. It's only Monday. It's the end of the year. Happy birthday to my godson Brian and my son Andrew. Happy birthday to them today, and anybody else celebrating for that matter. But most importantly, I hope everybody has a moment. I hope today you have your moment. Take your second, reflect a little bit, and then get ready to push forward hard. Because there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm happy to do it with you. It's only Monday. Make it count.